Hey guys, Savage Joy here with Real Progressives. Apologies that we had to reschedule on Friday, but we are fortunate enough to have Dr. Rodolfo Cortes on a few days after, so that's exciting. Thank you so much for joining us, Rodolfo.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been waiting to get on your show.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah.
You are actually recommended by a number of people. So Rodolfo is running for as a Green candidate in District 40 of California. Now, when I was researching, I saw that you're only going against one person, and it is the incumbent of 13 terms, which is crazy. Uh, and you know what? And I'm not even joking. I couldn't figure out if they are a Dem or a Republican by reading the articles. Like, I'm not even kidding. So, what is she, party wise?
Yeah, so she is a Democrat. She
Okay.
has, in fact, presided over the district since 1993. I've been living in the district since the mid 90s with my family. So it's been a while. I've observed literally her website growing up. She has like a little student section, student resources. So I used to check it out, and it's pretty much still there, unchanged, full of
Oh, wow.
questionable advice, I might add.
So, it sounds like they need something new. A little bit.
I think so, yes.
You have a
Yes.
really interesting story. You immigrated from Mexico, and you had some trials growing up. You had you talk on your page about having holes in your shoes, things like that. So you understand what the plight of us 99 percenters. Do you want to kind of give just a loose description of your background and how that helped shape who you are as a candidate?
Sure. So I was born in Mexico, and if people are familiar, in the state of Michoacan, which is one of the central states, a little bit to the west of Mexico City. So I grew up there, and as part of the general economic downturn that the Mexican economy suffered in the mid 90s, some of it related to NAFTA, my family and my parents decided to move on over here. So we were actually pretty lucky that back in the day, immigration was a lot easier. And when I say back in the day, in the 70s, my mom, she filled out some paperwork when she was visiting a relative here in the 70s, and then she got her, her papers, and it all became really easy for us. So that was great. But it was a struggle growing up in the States, of course. I initially had a language barrier, and of course a cultural barrier, and they play off each other. And yeah, I mean, we moved up here by very little resources. My dad worked at an upholstery shop in a city called Downey, which is where I grew up. It's one of the cities of the district. And we had very little money in. So yes, of course I experienced what that is like. Now I wouldn't say we have a lot of money. We obviously have more than back then, but still, I'll give you, my mom, she doesn't have health insurance. We don't have health insurance for her. We're in that weird, middle spot where, you don't qualify for Medi-Cal, but Obamacare is way too expensive. So yes, I understand the struggle of working people. And that's kind of why I'm running. Our representative who, we just talked about, she certainly does not understand the struggle. She was born into a very prominent family. Her father was the congressman who represented the district before her. So yes, I mean, it's literally in the textbook as an example of political aristocracy. So, while she and her family have benefited, the community has really been left behind. And we've seen that all around the country with, communities in Flint, communities in Minnesota, Seattle, people are going homeless in San Francisco, the rent's too high, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. People are being left behind, and it's because of these politicians that are so out of touch with regular people, but so in touch with corporate America.
Absolutely. That's you talk about health insurance, and of course that's big on everybody's list. And I do show you support universal health care. Speaking of Obamacare, what was it like for you when you heard him actually come out and be like, oh yeah, I'm down with Medicare for all now, after he's out of office? What I know, because I wanted to punch the screen. What kind of reaction did you have? Like, how frustrated were you?
I've gone back and forth with Obama, as I think most of us have. Back in 2008, I was pretty happy that, he got elected. I was very enthusiastic, but I was flabbergasted as to why he shelved that public option in 2008, right? And if you look at the records, you find, the Democrats actually got more money from the health insurance industry than the Republicans in the 2008 cycle. So unfortunately, he did at least partly campaign on at least a public option, a whole, single payer. But, he scrapped it, and instead he forced the people into buying a product, buying health insurance, the core of the ACA, otherwise you have to pay that tax penalty, et cetera, et cetera. So, to see him now come out on it, it just goes to show you that he's not who we thought he was. We assumed that his words of progressivism would translate into progressive policies. But actually, it's very clear that he aligned himself with corporate America, and maybe we should have been more astute observers back then, because it was all publicly disclosed. His donations were publicly disclosed, but I don't think that we as a people were quite aware of the relationship between money and politics as we are now. After the 2016 and all that. So I was very disappointed. I'm very disappointed with Obama. It's very sad what he did to all Americans, but certainly to my generation, our generation. So,
yeah, it's definitely sad. You talk about student loan forgiveness and free college. So you went from immigrant from Mexico, you came here, and then you got a PhD from Stanford. So you probably have a little student loan debt, I'm guessing.
Yes, I have tens of thousands of dollars in student loan debt. And I think I'm actually on the low end because last I saw, there's so many ways of calculating it, but like 60,000 appears to be the median. So like the 50-50 mark for people. So I'm below that. But it's still a lot. And, I know people that went to medical school with $400,000 in student loan debt. And, it's just this unbearable burden that we're placing on extremely bright and promising young people who could really be pulling our economy forward. And, it's a debt that other generations didn't have to bear, back in the day, right? After World War II, the United States invested in education for veterans, for regular working people, for everybody. College was affordable. It was actually very, very cheap. And they could have made it free. They decided, let's have people pay a nominal fee. But, it's the costs are through the roof. In the time that I've been out of college, which is, now almost a decade, I know that the tuition at UC's, the University of California system, has at least tripled, or last I checked. So obviously wages have not gone up in the same time, and the cost of everything else are also rising. So we shouldn't be surprised that, students are saying, hey, can you give us a break? And so of course, in our campaign, that's what we're pushing for. I know that we can forgive student loans. This is not some difficult task. right? This is a task that Congress can take upon itself, and it can get it done. So yes, I'm all aboard. Some people are calling it debt-free college, free college, just like they have in Germany. No, let's point out there's countries where this already happens. In Germany, kids are getting a free college education. In fact, we have American high schoolers going to Germany to get a free college education. Germany is a great place to go and visit, but it's a little bit of an embarrassment that our kids have to go to another country to get an education. We should provide it in America, because we're totally falling behind, and it's our own fault. It's Congress's fault. As we say in education, we need to meet the challenges of the future. That involves having an educated young workforce. So we need to invest in education. So yeah, we have to do it like they do in Germany. Free college for those that want to go to college. We can also have trade schools. We need apprenticeship programs. It can all be done through acts of Congress. So I'm certainly pushing for that. And for those that have already been through college, like myself, or higher education, master's degrees, PhDs, professional schools, we need student loan forgiveness. It's an investment in ourselves. We owe it to ourselves to push Congress to authorize, appropriate that money to be spent into the things that actually help our society thrive, like education.
Absolutely. I'm not sure if you saw, but 2 or 3 days ago, in Forbes, they had an article I saw on Facebook where they're telling a judge told Betsy DeVos that she has to start working with student loan forgiveness. So now it was very vague because it was just this week, but I'm interested to see where that's going to go. If it's going to go somewhere, I don't know, because she's already a bazillionaire, so I'm sure she'll fight it, but it's interesting to see even these things being talked about that weren't talked about before 2016. Like, at least people know what Medicare for All is now and things like that. So that's definitely the first step. So being as though you did come here as an immigrant, what's it like seeing, the things going on now?
Whew. Well, the situation for all immigrants to the United States has always been difficult, right? It's always been difficult, and it was difficult for the native peoples when they were here, in the process of meeting the immigrants coming from across the Atlantic, and it's always been a process, a difficult thing to come to the United States. So in the latest wave of immigration from Latin America, it's perhaps been a little bit less welcome than in previous waves. It's been far more difficult, right? And they used to say, open up Ellis Island, and let's have people come on over. Let's build a better country. Let's build the future. The destiny of the country, etc. So let's incorporate a whole lot of people in it. But over the last few decades, there has been a push against immigration, especially Latin American immigration. So I would say that, throughout my childhood, I experienced some sense of uneasiness. I'll give you an example. In the mid-90s, there was a proposition being pushed in California to get rid of bilingual education, which I happen to be enrolled in. So literally, right, the Spanish-speaking, there was a Spanish-speaking teacher and an English-speaking teacher, same classroom. So there was kind of an immersion experience, acculturation experience for immigrant kids. Well, they got rid of that. It happened the year after I really benefited from it when we moved over here. So that ended up working semi-okay for me, but I know that a lot of children were in those, waiting for that bilingual instruction and would have benefited from it, but they did not receive it. So that's just one example. Early on, there was something that was not quite right in how the children were being treated. But it wasn't this extreme hostility that we're seeing today. And over the last few years, I think that as a result of the austerity, the economic austerity, neoliberalism, a lot of people's anxieties, get channeled into blaming immigrants, right? Some say they're gonna take our jobs, is the classic line. If more of them come over, they're gonna take our jobs. With this idea that a job is something that's scarce and that there's not enough of, and that we shouldn't be having more people. They're gonna steal something from us, essentially. So, but yeah, that sentiment has really only been, I think, in super huge terms over the last couple of years, even maybe over the last year. Right? We're seeing a lot of hostility right now to that, the caravan of people that is moving through Mexico, escaping our foreign policy consequences in Central America. That's something that we as the United States have to take some responsibility for. And so, what do we do, right? So yeah, it's been a challenge, I would say, coming to the U.S. as an immigrant, certainly now running. But I think it's a quintessential American endeavor. So.
Absolutely. And speaking of economics, you actually support and promote MMT, which is so exciting for us because I never get to interview people who do. Well, I rarely get to interview candidates who do. So can you just kind of describe how you heard of it and how you began to implement it?
Well, I definitely first heard about it right here through Real Progressives. So thank you to Real Progressives, and especially thank you to Steve Grumbine, for really putting out the message so often and so clear for so many people. Initially I didn't quite understand what, he was referring to. But then,
we're all there.
You read into all of these writings and you think about it, you do your own research. It's very clear. The United States Congress has the power of the purse. It's just very clear. There's a lot of government websites you can check. You can track the money. So it's very clear to me that the United States Congress has immense power to essentially control the national budget, our national budgeting priorities. So that's actually a big chunk of the reason why I'm running, because we do need to use the public money, our money, for the public purpose, which is not what the current U.S. Congress is doing, and they haven't been doing it for decades. So we need to rectify that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if you explain that to people when you phone bank or you canvas or something, what are people's reactions? Like, what?
Well, there's a mix of reactions, but yes, I do very prominently put it out there. I have different versions of flyers, but some of them say right on them, the U.S. Congress can, in fact, afford the people. We do have the money. What we need is political willpower. So, these economic messages that, I want to give people. So, some people will certainly respond saying things like, no, Congress is broke. They get our money from us. And, in those situations, I just, I have to, keep talking to the voter, giving information. I like to give out information. They can check. There's links where they can see the budget. They can see the budget been moving through the federal process, after it gets passed. They can see how it's being received by, say, the National Science Foundation, the Department of Defense, and then they can check those numbers up against each other. They can see that first Congress decides on this set of numbers, and then the departments of the executive branch enact it through various ways, and they can see that there's no clear relationship to the IRS. Very important that this link doesn't really quite exist. So, I try to empower people with that information. A lot of my emails that I send out to the entire district have clear links to, Stephanie Kelton, Bill Mitchell writings, it's like a highlighted text, just actually, I think tomorrow I'm sending one about guaranteed health care. And I explain very clearly, this is not going to require more taxes. And then, okay, there's a link to something that can give them some insight. I share a lot of clips from Stephanie Kelton. I've sent around Stephanie Kelton's CNN interview with Fareed Zakaria because I thought it was short and good, and really explained the idea of a job guarantee and how to pay for it, how to really pay for everything. So yes, MMT is certainly very central to our message, and we try to find ways of talking about it. In other countries they do it. Look at England. England has had single payer healthcare, guaranteed healthcare for I think it's like 75 years now or something. So there's all sorts of ways of talking to people about what's possible, and really breaking through that fog that people have learned.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it'll be amazing the first time we get someone who supports MMT and, explaining it and everything. It'll be so much easier to explain to people, look, see how I'm giving you this, this, and this, and we didn't need to borrow anything? See how that works? That's because it's already there. Usually people need an example, for it to click. But yeah, rock on. Good for you. That's awesome. We have had some pushback from a lot of Greens. So as far as MMT, so when it comes to talking to fellow Greens, I know I had now I can't think of his name. The Green in California.
Kenneth? Eric?
Yeah, Kenneth. I had Kenneth on, and he seems down with MMT. So besides you guys, I haven't really met any who are down with it. So how do you talk to them about it? Because I don't know. Are they open to it? Because we haven't really found that.
Well, I think the Green Party is diverse. To a large extent, it's a big tent party. There's a lot of reasons why people become green. It could have to do with the environment. I think that's the case for a lot of people. It could have to do with social justice. It can have to do with democracy, election transparency, so many aspects of the Green Party platform. There is one particular aspect of the Green Party platform called greening the dollar. It's been a part of the platform for a while, not entirely sure how long, I think at least a decade. And, the people that placed it there are still in the party. And, just like any organization, they have some say, some influence on others' beliefs, ideas. And so right now we have the Greening the Dollar platform plank, which certainly is at odds with MMT. All I can say is that there's Greens that go one way, there's Greens that go the other way. So there are, I think, Green candidates for Congress that certainly understand this. Kenneth Mejia is certainly one of them who understands that, So it's, I think it's just important that Greens, non-Greens people, talk about the ideas because, after decades of hearing that we're broke and it being in the textbooks, and people not really seeing a way out of being broke. And like I said, some people told me, Congress is broke. Congress is broke. They can't spend any money that we don't give them. It's our money that they're spending. So many people are so convinced by that message that, all I can really think about is education. We're just putting ideas out there. People can consume them if they would like to, and hopefully they'll learn something. And I think when you really go after the facts, you can't escape the MMT model. It's just very clear. So I just try to give people clear information. That's, I think, really the only way that we can go forward. And we can talk about some of the side issues. Some people come against MMT because they think it props up a market economy, for example. So there's ways to dialogue that out. That's not quite exactly what MMT does. MMT is just a description, right, of what the state of the currency in a government usually has been for thousands of years. So giving people more information, historical information, is very important. So that's actually all that my candidacy is about. I'm trying to give people information about economics, about the environment, about education, because what's really important to me is that, obviously I'm giving it my all. So are my team crew members. They're out there knocking, and people text banking, calling, etc. Obviously, we hope to win the election. It's of course very difficult, but one thing that I really hope for is that, hey, at least we've made a difference as far as education for the future, so that next time, say there's a candidate running claiming that we're going broke, that people are armed with information to fight back against that.
Absolutely. Right on. As one of the things I was reading on your platform is something that I am incredibly passionate about, which is basically election reform, electoral reform. First of all, California just, in 2016, we were just so screwed. California was one of the ones, they had like 2 million uncounted paper ballots and boxes, and it was just awful. Then you guys had so many amazing candidates, and 21% of the state showed up to vote. So are you hearing a lot of noise about people voting this time? Like, does it seem like people actually are, more so than the primaries?
Well, I think that this election, we will see a higher turnout than the last midterm primary general election. In 2014, I think people are more engaged, but the vast majority of people are still not engaged, unfortunately. And I think that comes from different sources. Maybe people do not know that there's an election, in which case, we need to do a lot better job. We need to make elections a national holiday. Certainly federal elections, people should just be given the day off so they can go vote. They can take their kids so that the kids can understand that, this is our process, our political process. And so that's what we're contributing. And it's very important to go vote and read up on everyone who's running and everything that's being proposed. So in our district, we're actually the lowest turnout in California, in terms of percentage, in terms of numbers. And that comes with being, a district where, people are very busy trying to make ends meet. There isn't that much time to go vote. Hence, we need it to be a holiday. I think that could help. So I think people are more engaged than before, but I think a lot of people are still clued out. On Sunday, I was walking down a street, knocking on doors, and a guy just refused my my little card that I hand out Let me get it so you can see it. He just refused it. It has all the policy platforms. But he refused it because he says, well, I voted before, nothing changes. What am I supposed to do? Just keep voting? That's just insane. No, I'm just going to worry about myself. I'm going to worry about my family, and that's about it. I'm done with this voting thing. Nothing ever changes. For those people in those situations, I try to, bring up issues why it doesn't change. For example, corporate funding, right? So corporations have bought elections. Recently, it's really just a few corporations that buy our elections. So naturally, irrespective of who wins at the ballot box of the candidate, the corporations win, their policies win. That's why things don't change. I said that to the guy, and he seemed to respect that. So, and he took the card eventually. So hopefully he'll show up.
Well, yeah, it's so interesting how it seems like everything comes back to money in politics. That's why, we don't have Medicare for all. That's why we don't have, better environmental things. It always comes back to who you take money from. You're not going to care about the people. It comes down to that money. And, it's interesting too, because more and more centrists have stopped taking money too, which is interesting because I think they know they won't get any of the more progressives to vote if they don't. So that's interesting as well. I think I already know the answer to this, but does the woman you're running against take corporate dollars?
Yeah, it's a long list of horrors in that FEC file. Again, this is a low-income district, so we have predatory companies here. McDonald's takes a lot of advantage of the community. There's a McDonald's, every few blocks or so in some areas of the district. But yeah, I think she got like $10,000 last year from McDonald's. Walmart is here. Those are Verizon, AT&T. The regular companies that are making life difficult for working families certainly prop up her campaign, as well as the companies that are a little bit less well known by the public, but which control a lot of how our nation operates, like Northrop Grumman, right? They make a lot of the bombers, and Lockheed Martin, the fighter jets, all the usual suspects. So yes, my opponent is a corporate Democrat. She's one of Pelosi's, I would say closest people, most loyal people, because Pelosi has people that are trying to take her down. So my opponent is not one of those people. My opponent has for decades been silently helping Nancy Pelosi, kind of on the back doors. Nancy Pelosi always appoints her to the top committees. My opponent serves on, for example, the House Appropriations Committee, the Subcommittee on National Security. This is where the big stuff happens. This is where we decide to spend $1.4 trillion on the Department of Defense and increase the nuclear arsenal and fund ICE contractors like the GEO Group that are locking up kids at the border. And yes, my opponent does happen to also take money from the GEO Group and other private prisons. So it's just a disaster in that FEC file.
Yeah, I've interviewed a lot of candidates from California, and it seems like their two biggest concerns are the rent control and private prisons. Those seem to just come up continuously. You do have rent control on your platform. What is your thought process on how to decipher what the cap should be, or do you take a median from the neighborhood, or how would you work that?
Um, well, that's a complicated topic, but I am supporting rent control in California. This is Proposition 10 that we are pushing. Proposition 10 was recently endorsed by the guy behind you, Bernie Sanders.
There's a bunch of awesome things.
Yes, Proposition 10 will allow local governments to enact rent control if it passes, because right now local governments are barred from establishing rent control, especially for more recently built buildings. So in California, for anyone who may not know, we're facing a housing crisis. We have so many people out on the street, homeless because they can't make the rent. Rents just keep going up and up and up. There's families, in our district that recently got like $1,000 increase in their rents from, like $1,000 to $2,000. So clearly, regular working people cannot afford this. It makes no sense. It's just a predatory housing market run amok. So there are many apartment leasers and people that have apartments as part of their house or whatever. They don't engage in these unreasonable rent increases. But unfortunately, there are these people that are increasing the rent to such an extent that it's unbearable for working families. So for those situations, that's why we're really pushing Proposition 10. So perhaps, in the current state of how the economy operates, we need something like, a set low percentage to max it out. Some people talk about 2-3% per year, which seems, like manageable for working families, as well as, the person that owns the building can make more money, etc. So it kind of helps perhaps both parties. But of course, more generally, I do think that we should guarantee housing to people. There's countries in this world that have essentially solved the problem or question of housing. You go to Germany, you go to Japan. Homelessness, you go to Cuba. Homelessness is essentially eradicated. Those that are all out on the street, they're usually voluntarily there. Maybe they had a particular situation that got them there. But for the most part, those countries have eradicated homelessness. They decided, to say build public housing or build really affordable housing. We can have a combination of proposals on the table. But the point is that in other parts of the world that actually have way less money than we do, technically speaking, right, US dollars than we do, they have solved the issue. And meanwhile, here we are allowing our people to die on the street. Winter is rapidly approaching. We're going to have people that are going to pass away this winter in the United States. And that's purely a moral failure on the part of our so-called leaders. That's just on them. We have the resources to build more housing. We actually already have the housing to house those people. It's just that they're not allowed in.
Right, absolutely. When I had Jabanka Beckles on, she was talking about how the one thing that's so upsetting to her is there's lots of empty apartments, like literally right where there are homeless people. So that's upsetting. Why can't some kind of agreement be reached or something? It's incredible. You of course do support the federal job guarantee, which would obviously also help homelessness greatly. Why did you add that to your platform? Why is that something you're passionate about?
Well, the federal jobs guarantee is an idea that I came across, again, thanks to the power of the internet, Facebook, Real Progressives, Professor Kelton. And it's an idea that has been out there before. It goes back hundreds of years, actually, to in the Industrial Revolution, they were talking about guaranteeing people a job. Marx talked about everyone contributing to society with whatever they could, and then society providing back with whatever it could for that individual, right? The phrase is from each according to ability, meaning that people can give to society, contribute to the community in whatever way they might be most capable of. Some people want to paint houses, other people want to bake, other people want to take care of kids, other people want to be doing all sorts of things. So they have their ability and they provide it for the community, provide a positive benefit. And then the community reciprocates to each according to their need. Someone gets cancer, we provide the treatment for that person, as an example. So the federal jobs guarantee is a new way of discussing that idea, which is that society should be well functioning, meaning that people have the dignity of a role in that society. And it's up to people to decide what their role is going to be. Maybe we can provide some guidance, but the core thing is that everyone should be having a place in society that rewards them in a positive way for their personal life and that ensures them economic security. This is a situation that we must establish for the United States, and I would hope to see it established across the world. The right to a little space in the world to call your own, to call it your job, call it your role, so that you can contribute in a positive way to society.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting because you also have something on your platform that I'm seeing more and more, which is home caregivers, like family members, should be able to provide that home care and get a paycheck for it. And as someone in healthcare, I work full time doing, in healthcare, and I see how much this shit costs for private nurses to come to your house and things like that. So those are the kind of things we can implement with a federal job guarantee. So I was so impressed to see that on your platform. That's amazing. What other things do you want to discuss? I didn't see cannabis legalization. I may have missed it. Is that something you support?
So this is a very important issue, and I want to talk about it in the correct way. So what's going on in our district is that, again, we're a low-income community. So in low-income communities, what are some of the industries that prey upon those communities, right? So I've already mentioned McDonald's, fast food. We also have an overabundance of liquor stores, and increasingly there's been a push among some business interests to have a lot of cannabis shops in the district, especially in some of the poorest areas of the district, often right next to elementary schools. There's actually been a proposal in one of the tiniest cities you can imagine, but with like 30,000 people, tiny area, but so many kids. And there is a proposal to open up 21 cannabis shops in this tiny area. So let me state quite clearly that all sorts of dispensaries for any kind of substances that might be legal for adults to have should be kept far away from schools, certainly not right next to them, which is the current plan that we have, that some cities have to establish in our congressional district. That should not be happening, but of course I support the privacy of whoever is of legal age and buys it under the legal circumstances to the right to engage with a plant in the privacy of their own home. Yes, I support that. But again, it should be not near the children. We do know there's been some research that does show, I wouldn't call it abnormal, but differential neural development as a result of exposure to different substances. This is just the mechanics of it. So I want to be very clear, far away from kids, not near the schools, not across the schools, but yes, I support the legalization effort for people in the privacy of their own homes.
Okay. So as far as elections, I notice a lot of Green candidates who I interview are all about the ranked choice voting. Is that something that you support?
Yes, of course. I mean, it's not something that I push wholeheartedly in my campaign, because I mean, in California we have this very unique system of the top two primary. Washington State also has it. So I kind of really benefited from, the top two systems. So the current way that we have of electing individuals, since no one else signed up to challenge my my opponent in this round, I advanced automatically after the primary, and now, we'll hope for the best, and we're trying for the best, walking all week for next Tuesday. But yes, of course, I support ranked choice voting. We should not be in a situation where we're stuck between just two options that we don't appreciate, we don't like. We need ranked choice voting. We need paper ballots. I can't believe that in other states they have those electronic voting machines that don't give you a paper receipt. When I first heard about that, I thought, what? Huh? Seriously?
Yep. I'm in Pennsylvania. That's what we have.
That's crazy to me. Yeah, in California, thankfully, we still have paper ballots. They're counted by a machine, but that machine was built in the 60s. And we've never really had a scandal in LA County. So I'm not super scared about that type of election fraud.
Oh man, it's crazy seeing all the vote blue, no matter who, people just hype right now, like, oh my God, the Republicans are cheating. Dude, where were you in 2016? Because they did this shit in 23 states, and we have proof. And that now they're like, but guess what? It might not have happened if you guys marched with us outside when we were at the convention. You know what I mean? So people think it's a very partisan thing, and it's not. It's undemocratic all the way around. As far as someone wants to ask about star voting, I'm not really sure what that is. Have you heard of it?
I actually have not. That sounds intriguing. Star voting.
She said people say it would be better than ranked choice voting. I'll have to look that up afterwards. I've never heard of it. Susan wants to know, do they have early voting in LA?
Yes, early voting has started. There's been some ballots that have been turned in. A fair number of Republican ballots, which I actually expect will be going for me rather than my opponent. Independent ballots are up. The Democratic ballots always come in late. Democrats like to vote closer to the election. That's something that is stable across different elections. That just seems to happen. So yeah, the ballots are coming in. We're doing everything we can to reach as many people as possible. So we're wrapping up in 7 minutes, right? Is that because
yes. You have to get campaigning.
Oh, well, there's that. But I was going to give people, if anyone had any time to volunteer, I wasn't sure, but if you wanted to ask more questions before I
no, give your shout out. Absolutely. Give your website, give what you need. Somebody did post, Mark, a teammate, just posted your website in there. So if you guys want to contribute a few dollars, share this stream, send Rodolfo's information to all your friends in California. You know, do what you can do, because we gotta get progressives elected. It's people, not party. We gotta get away from that. Vote person.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I know that you know, a good number of you may know me, so thank you for all the support that you've had for the campaign, the Real Progressives, especially. Thank you for, you know, teaching me all these things. I would not be running MMT if it wasn't for Real Progressives, especially Steve Grumbine, you know, who is out there, you know, teaching us. So thank you to Steve for teaching everyone, sharing what you've learned, and sharing all the work of Bill Mitchell and Stephanie Kelton, all those wonderful people, economists. So this is a race that can be won. Our opponent has essentially, well, she definitely doesn't have a ground game. There's no one going around knocking on doors. She hasn't raised that much money, you know, compared to other people. I think she has like $80,000 in the bank, but she hasn't been spending any of it. She doesn't campaign. There's never really been a We're really the first to have a campaign against her. We're the first to file with the FEC. Yes, in 26 years. There's never been a true push against her. She was kind of installed into this position. That's literally what a voter told me, an older voter who had been voting.
Her dad held it first.
Her dad held it. He was her campaign manager. So she's never really had a contest. But I am a person, you know, I grew up in the community, checking out her website, getting advice about how to pay for college. She kind of suggests student loans on her website. She was doing that in 2004. She's kind of still doing it today. Or you go to the military. But I'm saying, no. Those are not the best options we could be having for young people. Let's have good educational opportunities that are guaranteed for all of our young people, and really all people. You know, if you're a senior and you want to go back to school, let's empower you. So those are not things she's talking about. Those are not things that anyone's really talking about. But again, our race is winnable, and it's winnable if we get more, especially phone bankers and text bankers. I know that there's a lot of people watching that they may be hesitant to make an actual phone call. So I'm telling you right now, we have an awesome app where you just click send. It works especially well if you have an iPhone, but we can work with an Android phone with you too. And you just send a text, and you know, a lot of people respond, and they're like, yeah, I'm voting for him. Yeah, I like these things. You know, we send like a little blurb about the platform, and people are ready for change. They need to hear about us. So but it's totally winnable. So yes, my task is, you know, I've done a lot of personal canvassing up and down the district. I have our volunteers are out there. So that's great. And I'm going to go right back out, you know, to stand outside grocery stores, because that's, you know, high traffic, and, you know, people are worried about, literally people come out of the grocery stores looking at the huge bill, and they're like, oh my gosh, why is it like, you know, $100 to just get, you know, some, not even that many groceries. And that's because, you know, right, the prices of everything are going up while wages stay low. But yeah, so we're out there. We have a campaign. Unlike our opponent, she has nothing. She has some signs that are going up, and you know, they really encapsulate what is wrong with the Democratic Party. They say right on them, California's first Latina in Congress. Well, great that we should be encouraging Latinas to enter Congress. But how has the success of my opponent, you know, helped women in the district, like my mom, who doesn't have health care, like my aunt and grandma, and like so many women, young girls do not have the opportunities they could be having because Congress is bought out by corporations. And that includes my opponent. No, we need to say no to the corporations, and we need to tell people that, that's why we're working people, and that's the message we put out there. Rodolfo is a corporate-free candidate, member of the community, and hey, do you want Medicare for all? Do you want free college for your kids, right? Do you want rent control? So, we're very platform-based. It's all about the platform, ending pollution, no more wars, very important. Federal forgive student debt. Where's the federal job guarantee? Federal job guarantee, federal job guarantee. Of course, we want to protect the dreamers. We want to protect immigrants against, these horrible things that are happening. And our opponent has been complicit in that. People just don't know. They assume, well, she's a Democrat. She's the first Latina in Congress. Clearly, she's helping out the community. No, that's not the case, and it's not the case for the general Democratic Party either. So, our campaign is about education, I'm very hopeful. I think we've done a lot for the general election. I know that we're gonna, this week is gonna be crazy, but that's the way it's got to be. And if anyone can. A text bank, it's super easy. It's so easy. Come on, guys, direct message me on my personal page or my Congress page, and let's get it done. It's so easy. You can be done with 1,000 texts within an hour. So reach out. Rodolfo for Congress at Gmail, Rodolfo Congress, that's Twitter, and also follow me on Instagram, Rodolfo for Congress. So thank you, Joy, for having me.
Absolutely. Looks like we already have a phone banger and a donation in the comments.
Wonderful.
So that's exciting.
Yay.
Our viewers are so kick-ass. Like, they're so amazing. They're so informed and they're active. And I'll miss interviewing candidates. I definitely will. You're almost 100th for me, which is insane. If you want to give one last, shout out to encourage people to vote, what do you want to leave the viewers with?
This election is probably even more important than the 2016 election. You must go out there and show that you care about the fact that our country is falling apart, and more generally, the world is falling apart. We have to take solutions into our own hands. We have to remember what the founding quote, fathers said. What did they say? They said no taxation without representation. What do we have today? We have taxation without representation. Regular people are not represented in the U.S. Congress. It's just the corporations that own that Congress that are represented. So we've reached that point in our development as a nation. We have to defend ourselves as called upon by the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution. We have to defend ourselves against the corporate forces that are trying to rule our lives in the same way that the founding fathers defended themselves against British corporations that controlled the king and that wanted to control the American colonists. No, we have to stand up for our families and say no to the corporate state. In whichever way that you can, please do so. It's very important. If you don't do it, our society, civilization is going to collapse. Thanks.
Absolutely. Right on. Perfect way to end it for sure. As always, thank you guys for watching. Thank you so much, Susan. That's so kind. Tomorrow I have an independent from Pennsylvania. So that's always exciting when I can interview someone here. His name is Bill Ayers. I'm so bad. So yeah, he's an indie. The guy he was going up against passed away. So I think he's got it. But he's running as an indie write-in because the guy passed away after it was like time to sign up. So he has to run as a write-in. So that should be interesting. He's a character. But anyway, oh, thank you, Mark. I love you. Sorry. Anyway, read the comments afterwards because you're getting a lot of love, and hopefully it, inspires you, and we're rooting for you 100%. We have been since day one. So thank you so much for joining us again, Rodolfo, and best of luck with everything.
Thank you, Joy.
Absolutely. Take care.
You too. Bye.